been a learning process. It's been a learning experience. Because prior to now, I've held different philosophies. This was inspired by an assignment given to me by Dr. Tiffany and Mr. Monday. So I'd like to begin by giving a quick run through the biography of Martin Luther King. I think history sort of has this effect of exaggerating the personalities of individuals. And Martin Luther King will be one of these people. To a lot of people, Martin Luther King was an activist, pastor, revered figure. But to me, I think my research, my little research in him, as sort of presented his very human side. Things like his emotional side, his longing for change, which is something all of us humans, well, I say, long for. And his flaws. And one of them will be even wanting to commit suicide at some point in his life as a result of his feeling imperfect. So I think this sort of showed me the fact that any of us could be and could relate to the character in Martin Luther. This takes me to his philosophy on life. I think growing up, he, as every human being, was educated. And his education sort of metamorphosed from one of being, will I say, being not in charge of his emotions to being in charge of his emotions, which really showed his views or his change in views of the use of violence in implementing change. Martin Luther, growing up, was a very, very youthful person, I think, because he believed in self-defense and, to an extent, the use of force, violence, which was practiced or seen as practice in his early years as an activist. But one thing that is key is the enlightenment stage in his life. Enlightenment coming through mentorship and studying, and which could be seen in I think Rustin Bernard, which was his mentor at his youthful age, and then his exposure to Gandhi's literature, and all of this sort of refined his idea of the use of force in sourcing for change. So this will take me into what strategy, the concept of strategy and change is. Strategy is important. Marrying the idea of strategy and non-violence is key. Because non-violence, for all it is a very passive notion. Non-violence is basically you not carrying out force. And we live in a society where the first line of thought is, force is important in implementing anything. And I, to a large extent, am born into that school of thought. In that, peace is nobody's birthright. In order to attain change as human beings, violence, to a great extent, should be implemented. And violence, I believe, normally ignites this very negative idea to people. I mean, if you ask anyone what they think about violence, you jump straight to saying violence is bad. But I take a very immoral stance on the concept of violence. I think violence is just violence. But violence put in context is where our let's say, divergent in views really becomes. So strategy, I'll come back to strategy now. Strategy and non-violence, I'd say, is the violence sort of path to finding change, but still in a very individualistic sense. In that, rather than going through the path of violence where you end up losing your life and there are very negative consequences following that path, this opportunity presents itself, and we see in the lives of a lot of people who applied this path. There are people who weren't weak, who never had weak personalities. They were very strong. They had very strong personalities. And Martin Luther was one of those people. And as I stated earlier, he was or started off as an activist in the violent realm. In that he applied for probably, I should quote, but I won't, for the lack of time, I won't progress. But yes, strategy and change, I would say, and non-violence was key. And when Martin Luther was exposed to the literature of Gandhi, that was the beginning of enlightenment, I'd say, for him. And I think we could see is implementing that path first in the Montgomery bus boycott, and that was where the I think Rosa Parks was experienced sort of racial taunt, and she stood her ground, and Martin Luther was called to sort of stand as the face of, or the face against racism or oppression of the black people. His approach in that situation was to sort of calm everyone down, like sit everyone down, bring everyone to the table, and call everyone to present strategies. Strategies in the realm of no one is going to use violence, but what we're going to do now is sit down and see alternative routes to actually obtaining what we want. Obtaining what we want in this sense as being in equality. And I think his approach here was to sensitize and spread the news to all black people, and probably people who were in support of their cause, to not get on the buses, to not carry out violent rallies, but rather sort of encourage everyone to participate in withdrawing their consent or support of government for the oppressive laws in the United States at that time. And what we could see was the community coming together, the community of black people coming together to sort of support the strategy, support the idea propagated by Martin. And what took place at that time was people, rather than get on the bus, would take bicycles to work. The black community, people who had opportunities to own cars, would sort of get people free rides to work rather than allow their neighbor suffer the negative consequences of not getting on the bus. So the strategy in this case now was people not getting on the bus meant the payments made for bus rides to work were being cut off. So that affected economically generally the United States. And what we see was the reaction. The reaction was more of rather than reciprocate with violence. What we saw was a court order later granted, recognizing the right to equality of the black people. So I want us to sort of think hypothetically of what would have happened if a violent reaction was taken. Say, for instance, the black people sort of rallied themselves to say, no, we're going to fight, or burn the buses, or sort of take a very rash action. That would have cost violence to be reciprocated. And this
all ended up in jail.
All ended up in jail. And this is where the strategy comes into play, and non-violence. Non-violence by itself seems a very weak construct. I mean, using your non-violence sort of opens you to the mercies of the stronger class, which is my personal hatred, per se, my personal dislike for the concept or idea of non-violence. But when we bring in strategy into it, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Well, every one of us has life as a gift. Life is man's greatest gift, and our ability to use it sort of sagaciously sets us apart. Say, for instance, terrorism is a means to social change. Terrorism is a means to social change. What we see now is, or I would like to sort of magnify this big classification.
while vying for change in society, the parts are basically, you have this violent and the non-violent. Why I say amoral, and which we view the violence amorally, is as much as people would negatively view or criticize the violent side, it doesn't mean it lacks effect. It does have effect, but the repercussions are what we talk about now. And when we look at the non-violent side, it seems weak in the sense that progress isn't seen on a short term. And as Martin Luther stated, it's a constant struggle. It is a constant struggle. And the thing is, us as humans are able to strategize. We have that defined in our complex process. We have the ability to strategize. And the key strength in non-violence approach lies in strategy. And our ability to sit back and do the homework when it comes to strategy is what determines how far we go with non-violence. And I think those statistics on the impact of non-violent strategy. And it says almost 6 billion, I'm sorry, not 6 billion, that's a quarter of the world's population, has been saved violence via war just by going through the path of non-strategy, of non-violence. And take, for example, Gandhi. Gandhi was a big mentor of Martin Luther. Gandhi took a lot of his cues from Leo Tolstoy, which was a Russian great thinker. And what they preached was, what they preached was non-violence. And it's hard to distinguish non-violence from, say, religious standpoint or the ethical standpoint. Because to a very large extent, the non-violence path sort of gains a lot of impetus from the religious stance. And Christianity being one of these sort of this propounders. Christianity basically, I'd say, I relate to Gandhi and Martin Luther, quoting one of Jesus' sermons, talking about being slapped on one cheek and turning the other cheek. That in itself is preaching non-violence. And if we look at what Jesus, for instance, was able to accomplish, not during his time, after he died. If we go back and think about how far Jesus would have gone if he took the revolutionary part, he would have died a long, long time ago. Thinking about the Roman Empire which he was acting in. Everyone wanted him dead, but no one could lay a finger on him because he took the very peaceful part. And that was where Gandhi, the likes of Gandhi, Leo Tolstoy, and Martin Luther sort of gained their philosophy. And this philosophy was what led to their great accomplishments. And up till date, Martin Luther's teachings, his stance on oppression, is still much appreciated by people. And his legacy led to a lot of improvement. Improvements, number one, being the ability of the black people to sit on the same buses as the whites. Ability of the black people to vote just as the whites did in their time. Martin Luther brought about great sensitization of the black people, helping them appreciate the fact that if they put their mind to something, they could achieve it. Number three, I think one of the things, or his greatest achievements, will be the impetus he gave to the activist movement in America then, which went a long way to achieving even more than he did during his time. So it's like we shouldn't view Martin Luther's achievements as isolated. When we view it in context, it's way bigger than we can comprehend. So his simple stance on change has gone a long way to sort of affecting the way we act as human beings. And also thinking of bringing into context the times we live in. We live in a time where war isn't really appreciated. I mean, we are violent people today, but I think everyone has their philosophies. I'm talking about a general philosophy now. Nigerians, for instance, love their lives. Every Nigerian wants to enjoy life and, make money and enjoy these basic necessities. And it's sort of incorporating incorporating a movement that suits what we desire. And you see, non-violence will be this part for us. Non-violence in the sense that rather than go through the parts of like the Boko Haram are doing now, Center LSD, for instance, has been one of my enlightening moments. I think everyone goes through that period. Prior to now, I made mention of me having a very negative stance and what or how to come by change. Negative in the sense that people wouldn't generally subscribe to my philosophy. But the non-violence part is a big alternative to people, and it's the route.